Hello and welcome to AstroMingle, the spiritual podcast that mingles with the talented lightworkers and innovative influencers of our time. As we enter into the dawn of the age of Aquarius and light, we're seeing more traditional industries start to move toward a spiritual technology, and tonight's guest has got a solution for just that in the medical industry. Tonight we have the incredible Dr. Kay Corpus joining us. Kay is a family physician with specialized training in integrative and functional medicine. But what truly sets her apart is how she blends science with the soul. Her own transformative experiences navigating menopause completely reshaped her approach to women's health. She was inspired to create Soul of Medicine, a holistic practice that helps women embrace life's transitions with empowerment and grace. And through her Soul of Medicine Institute, she's teaching other practitioners how to lead with intuition and heart in their practice, refining what primary care can look like to begin with. So please join me in sending some waves of love and light for our guest tonight, Step 27 Pisces, Dr. Kay Corpus. Yay! We need applause if we can here. Hello, heavens. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start with that. We've got had an eclipse, a lot of stuff in your season, just for other Pisces out there, and you being a master Pisces. How was it?
Very interesting. I feel like I've been reborn.
Really? Oh, that's great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so 27 Pisces are on a mission, for sure. And you're living up to that, obviously, with what you are doing. And this is really the launch. So I couldn't say you're in the best timing possible, really, as far as running like clockwork. So congratulations to that. There's so much to talk about here and even get to know more than I was ever able to know. I guess the first question is, when did you defect from conventional medicine? When did you shift to a more integrative approach?
So, it's interesting because I followed a path of my parents who are physicians. And when I was 12, I knew I was going to be a doctor, but there was this voice that came to me that said, fine, I'll be a doctor. You can be a doctor, but it'll be something different that doesn't have a name yet. And that was
Mm.
before integrative and functional medicine was actually coined. It was really interesting, but I was always sort of the rebel, I guess, not really following what my parents wanted me to do, doing things differently. So all along, it was sort of a different path for me. I found yoga in medical school. One of my teachers asked me to read Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you know her, but in that book, she said all diseases were from an emotional imbalance.
Mm.
As at the same time I was studying, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and I was like, why am I studying this stuff if this statement is actually true?
True. Yeah.
So I kept both of these things beside me. So the conventional studies and this my secret closet of emotions and the chakras I learned, and I didn't really come out with it until later on in my practice. So it's sort of always been with me. Yeah.
So you sort of everyone was kind of a guinea pig. You were just studying everyone in both worlds as you were doing traditional medicine. You were also in the background, just observing these other insights that you had that you were keeping track of, researching as you go. Now, emotionally, I mean, gosh, I don't know. When I go to a doctor, I tend to hold it all in. So I imagine there's some you really get them comfortable with you to share, because I always feel like I'm being graded when I go to the doctor. Were there techniques you used just to kind of get them to share their feelings? And
Well, I was very emotional as a medical student, as a resident. I mean, literally, I would get in trouble all the time because I'm talking to the patient. I was always late in my
oh,
clinic, hours late, and it was like, Corpus, come on, we got to go. But I'm like, what they're scared. They have this story. I want to sit with them, and really, it was not a good thing in conventional training. I had a hard time making it through because I really wanted to connect with my patients. And, I was told I was too emotional. Um, so that was hard. I tried to shut that down and I really couldn't. That wasn't something that I could get rid of. So for me, it was something I always tried to pull out of my patients and connect with them in that way, which now is the basis of my practice. It's really all about the emotions, the emotional imbalances. And it's, you know, that's the lacking thing in medicine, this humanity, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, humans.
Hmm.
Yeah, totally. Well said. And we saw that with COVID recently. I think really thrown in our face. For people who don't really understand or know, can you explain what integrative and functional doctor is, and how they differ from conventional doctors?
Yeah, sure. So conventional Western medicine, as you know, focuses on diagnosing and treating specific diseases
Mm,
that with pharmaceuticals and surgery, there's the super emphasis on the physical body. And integrative medicine is this combination integrating conventional medicine and complementary and alternative medicine. Some of the tenets there are the doctor-patient relationship. My teacher, Dr. Andrew Weil, wanted to really teach primary care providers who are interested in this or other physicians how to refer out, for example, to acupuncturists or chiropractors. Or so we're sort of in this community together using each other's knowledge. Um, and functional medicine is more of that root cause. So we use a lot of testing. We look at systems, body systems, and try to get to the root physical cause of what's happening. So, for instance, we look at adrenal dysfunction, the gut dysfunction, the thyroid dysfunctions, hormones, all of that, and how that plays together.
mm,
And we try to orchestrate, how to balance everything. So it's interesting, integrated and functional medicine have a similar philosophy where we're treating the whole person. I kind of think as integrative medicine as a very global way of looking at it, a very feminine way of practicing, and functional medicine has sort of that science and the analytical, trying to also integrate the whole of the person. So
mm.
having both, many of us are trained in both, you know, both philosophies. So it's a nice balance.
It's surprising that you had to go off and specialize in it. I mean, the reductionist scientific view is so interesting that that we were treating bodies like a muffler. Like just one part that was going wrong with it, not a holistic. Is that? Do you feel it just? Do you have any opinions? And I know you may not, but just how we went down that path. I mean, when you were in school, did you see the logic behind it? Because it seems, from the outside looking in, it looks weird.
So the system, the conventional system, is built on treating illness.
Mm,
That is what they do. And so integrative medicine and functional medicine focuses on wellness. If we
uh,
focused on wellness, that's a completely different system,
wow.
right? So that's sort of the biggest difference. And honestly, practicing integrative and functional medicine within a hospital, which I did within in a conventional system, is also very difficult for us to do because we still have to meet quota. We have to order certain labs and prescribe different things. So for me, I had to exit out of that scenario pretty quickly. So private practice was the way for me to go. I needed time with my patients to talk about anything, decide to order labs or not order labs, and just have a real conversation and connection with them. It's difficult in the system. So
Mm.
mm.
How is you're a mother? How did a mother change? Being a mother change it? Having to put your daughter into your child into the system.
Yeah, so I think it started a lot with them getting sick and vaccinations and things like
Mm,
that. Over medicalizing them,
mm,
and even being pregnant and having to get certain procedures. I was an older mom,
mm,
in my late 30s and already considered advanced maternal age at that time,
mm,
where
mm,
it's like, I'm at my prime. I should be okay. Why are you ordering all these tests on me? But, when my kids would get sick, I didn't want to pump them full of antibiotics,
mm,
and, it was really interesting. I had a mentor who was an anthroposophical doctor. Not sure if you've heard of that, but that's sort of the integrative medicine that they do in Europe, and started by Rudolf Steiner
mm,
um, in like the 20s
mm,
in Austria. And they actually looked at the spirituality of the patient. He used astrology actually in
oh,
his practice. Um, But what I learned from this practitioner was that, especially with children who would get sick, for instance, fevers, they're trying to, before the age of 7, they're trying to inhabit their bodies. They're
Mm,
coming from the spiritual world, trying to inhabit their bodies. So they're expelling through fevers, through
mm,
diarrhea, through, you
mm.
know, uh, runny noses and things. And so I stopped pathologizing every time my kids would get sick and make me feel like a bad mom because I wasn't home a lot. But it
Mm,
was their opportunity for growth, right? So I
mm,
invited the opportunity for them. Oh, they're sick again. I wonder what's going to happen. So my daughter went from saying one word to 2 words, 2 words to 3 in full sentences every time she would have a fever. And then my son's pant legs would get shorter. So
huh.
if, as parents, we would look at those transitions as growth periods for our
Mm.
kids versus like, I need to squish this fever or something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. It's
Well,
just a transition, so just like illness or just like menopause, with your opening there, I think there's a lot of pathology around just the natural processes that happen in humans as part of their growth, and I think that stunts them, in fact, and delays them. I used to see kids so we would try remedies, right, and supplements to help them through that. Nobody wants to be miserable, but we try not to squish the process with antibiotics and Tylenol, for instance. And when I
mm,
would see kids, a subset that would have Tylenol and antibiotics and the other that would have homeopathic remedies, I mean, they would still get sick, but, treating them naturally, they would whip it much faster than the ones we would try to
mm.
prolong.
Well,
Yeah. Hmm.
interesting. Interesting point you bring up there too. Just the idea that maybe we have it completely backwards. The body's really getting well in that moment, not getting sick, or the body's going through a transition, not having a
Hmm.
problem per se. Maybe it's just like labor of some sort, huh? You're saying
Hmm.
with growth and whatnot. Yeah, just to always look at something as a problem, and maybe it's natural in a sense, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, you know, how does functional medicine reveal the root cause then? I mean, how does that how does that approach lead to the beginning?
So for me, when I look at a patient, it's 90% stress that walks into a primary care.
Okay,
And there
gotcha.
were studies that show that the patient would actually probably 70% of the time would say they're stressed, but about 20% of the time that was actually addressed. So that doesn't make any sense to me,
Right.
right? And so our stress organ is our adrenals, our fight or flight organ, right? And so um, that then influences our thyroid, it influences our sex hormones, which can influence our gut. So these are the 4 pillars that we
Mm,
look at and try to balance. But my first question for patients is, what's going on in your life?
mm,
What stress is going on? And usually it's like, nothing, I'm fine, but
mhm,
it's being a mom is stressful,
mm.
working is stressful, just existing in the world is stressful. It doesn't always have to be a sustained panic attack, right? But
Right.
things are really stressful. And honestly, many, if not all of my patients are empathic in nature.
Mm,
And that's something that, I have to explain to them that, you're like a sponge, you're really absorbing
mm,
everything around you. And it's really shocking your system right now. So we sort of have to look at that, their constitution, and understand their sensitivity, not as a weakness, but, it's oftentimes a gift, but people aren't taught how to manage their energy, you know?
mhm.
So oftentimes what happens with that is they end up being over medicated and over supplementized, and, in that system of not being able to kind of get a hold of their symptoms, and just realizing that, boundaries are really important, and, taking care of themselves really important, and who they hang out with really important. So,
Mm, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I have such a stressful life that to me, if I'm having a panic attack, what stress? What are you talking about? I mean, I think I just normalize it so much that I don't really
Mhm,
think about the effect it has on my body.
mhm.
In fact, I have had doctors ask, how are things been, and I'm fine. If it's not a car crash or something dying, then I'm doing great. Like it's just
Exactly.
what's normal. The normal zone is just way out of whack. It's also interesting too in the sense that I've always found it fascinating that I guess we get tons of viruses and things in our body all the time.
Mhm.
We're carrying it, and it's at this one time that your body goes down and can't fight it in that one moment. It's always been suspicious as well, you know.
Yeah. So you have to look at, what is the state of your immune system? The immune
Mm.
system and the gut are really reflections of your emotional boundaries, honestly. So if
Really?
you've been, oh yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so that's how I sort of look at the body as symbols of other things. Like the skin, for instance, is a boundary between your inside and outside world. And your
Mm.
gut lining is a reflection of keeping, the viruses in or out of your body, right?
Mm.
So what is those are portals to asking these deeper questions of, you know, what's happening? Where are you leaking your energy right now?
Mm.
And what's interesting is, so that could be physical, but learning a lot, with your practice and with Serious Joy, and you know um being coached by some of the people that you've had on this too. It's really like, now I see that the root cause is much deeper than just driving the adrenals, right? So
Mm.
what is actually driving that fight or flight? And it's not often things in this lifetime, right? As we both know, that now
Okay.
play into this. So it's expanding this knowledge of where, how our bodies are operating, because they're, between dimensions and different timelines now, which may seem this is really it. My colleagues are probably rolling their
Yeah,
eyes
yeah.
now, but it's to the point where we don't have a choice anymore not to look at these aspects, because when I started addressing them in the practice, things start to shift and change very quickly. So
Mm.
why is that? Without a test, without a supplement, without a medication. So
Mm.
there's something to this.
Is your couple things? One, is your general policy to just not medicate if possible? I mean, I'm talking about with traditional over the counter things. Do they just do, in your opinion, kind of confuse the situation?
It depends on the patient, right? It depends on what they need and what their beliefs. So I don't
Mm.
think of conventional medicine as that medicine and this one is mine. I had to learn my lesson very quickly around that. I look at it, we have all of these tools, at that to our, advantage, and we use them properly. If we need an antibiotic, if we need surgery, then fine. That's what we need. And recovery phases with, myofascial release or homeopathic
Mm.
remedies, it's one and the same. So I treat a lot of patients with functional medicine and undergoing chemotherapy, doing surgery. We'll do a both and I think, sometimes there's that shame piece of like, I want to be really holistic and I don't want to take that
Hmm.
hormone or that medication or have the surgery, but you kind of need it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that at
Yeah.
all. The body is really resilient. So whatever the
Incredibly.
patient needs. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at all the poisons that are in all the foods and all the everything, you would think we would not be standing, but we are. Like the
Mhm.
body has really managed to take on so many foreign substances. And you're mentioning like sometimes the illness is not of this time or this world. I mean, in the last 2 years, we've had Saturn and Pisces, and so a lot of our past life stuff has been coming up for
Mhm.
all my clients too. So I'm also seeing that where they'll hit a period. I mean, everyone will hit a period. Actually, we just went through it. So we just went through a purge. In the last 3 weeks,
Mhm.
everyone I know had some sort of a
Mhm.
physical breakdown during that purge. And they all chose it in their own way, creatively. And so I've always found that when I'm going through an astrological purge, I have some sort of illness or dis-ease that happens as well. But and also in the same sense too, I've gone too far, where I thought I was in having purge, and turns out I had a real problem. I need to go to the doctor. So but they certainly emerged for me. I mean, and there's been a couple of cases where I've had known injuries in past lives, and then I have re-injured that same spot in this lifetime,
Mhm.
with a scar or some sort of a wound in the same spot that it was happened that I knew had happened in the past life. Um, I mean, I'm not sure what position you are in to see those types of trends, but do they make sense?
Yeah. So, I had a patient, when I can't figure out from a physical standpoint, even with my integrative and functional medicine, that's where I go. So I actually do work with a medical intuitive in my practice and a
Mm,
psychic in my
wow.
practice, and we run charts. And if we can't figure it out, or I'm thinking the CT isn't showing this or the MRI isn't showing this, but I think something's coming up. Do you see it? Um, and they'll say,
Mm,
yeah. So it's either that we caught it way before in its
mm,
state before it manifested, or something else. But I find that really fascinating. And so one case, an example, we had a patient who um, she had a lot of past life stuff going on and injuries, and she
mm,
had an infection in this life that was happening. But we gave her we tried an antibiotic, and it worked, but it was from something way way before, so it wasn't
mm.
like in this time, and it happened to work. So
Wow.
um yeah, so
Identified
I
the old
can't.
medicine.
Yeah.
She wanted
Yeah,
the cocaine aspirin or whatever. Just kidding. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm,
So it's so fascinating to me. I don't have all the answers, but I'm so curious about all of this. And I find that there's limitations in the system that we're in. Um, and, I think it could help a lot of patients if we just opened up a little bit more, asking those deeper questions. And you've taught me this. I say this all the time. What does your heart say? And it
mm,
starts this really cool portal. I don't know. I've never talked to my heart before. And like, well, let's sit and talk to it. And the
mm.
kinds of answers and questions that come out of that are really profound. And it just helps patients, listen and get to know themselves and become their own doctors and their own advocates. It's really, really beautiful. So it seems like a simple question, but it's really profound. So
Yeah, and do you find that patients maybe suffer less when there's a spiritual integration into the system or the setup? For instance, my friends who have families that all the flu blows through the house, right? But like the light workers in the house have lighter cases, and the
mhm.
ones who are more cynical or whatever or cause problems with that person because usually only one or two per household, they're down for 10 days, and it almost seems like the denial of the spirit almost makes it worse from what I've observed, but it's not a judgment, just an observation.
Yeah, I agree. I
Hmm.
agree.
Yeah.
And just, mindset and, calling on, healing angels. I do that all the time. I do it all the time, and, ask them to look over my patients and my family. I believe in that kind of divine intervention. And,
Hmm.
that it's I've become very humbled with this kind of work.
Mm.
We don't have all the answers as doctors, not even close. And so I want my team to be really, whether they're, you know, present and or invisible, I want my team to be huge. So I think that's
Mm.
really powerful.
Wow, interesting. That's funny. It's interesting. I've never thought of a doctor like, let's pray. Bring in a doctor.
Well, most
Yeah.
doctors say let's pray at the end. The only thing we can do now is pray, right? That's the thing at the
Oh,
very
right,
end.
right.
Nothing else we can do, when that should actually be, you know, in the beginning of the
Yeah.
conversation.
Started off that way. Yeah. So how do you, being an astrologer, I'm really curious. How have you incorporated traditional medicine with astrology then, and insights from
So
astrology?
yeah, so I mean, I am not an astrologer by any means. I am learning now, actually with Karen Crony and Dylan. I've been spent some time with him too with human design. So
Mm.
I think they're on the call, but I at minimum, I will look at my patient's birth date, and sometimes we'll pull up their charts, look at where Chiron is, where
Mm.
Jericho is. Karen has taught me that. She's amazing. And it does give perspective, of a little bit deeper insight of this is written in the charts, just like my lab results over here. That's just one layer of confirmation. So too is their chart. And these are for people that are open to this, and they quite love it. So I would like to start to expand the practice to include more of that. It's great. So
Yeah, I actually haven't gone too far into that integration myself. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just that I had health issues and I'm just prolonging them. You know, but I have seen without a doubt that they're organs that are ruled by the same states of awareness, and there are aspects of the organs that, like, it seems like subparts of it are ruled by different states, and it seems like it has the body has some sort of the same energetic integration of all these different 12 basic states of awareness in different complexities to help function and really power the body. And certainly during certain transits that are higher or lower, you see certain things. Without a question, you see signs go down. As far as like Pisces right now, I mean, more Pisces than not, are going down with Saturn and Pisces. We see it even in Serious Joy. We'll see our crop of students come up and down, totally based on Saturn. And, we see basically influxes, students leaving at the end of a Saturn transit, and new students coming at the beginning of a new one. So without a doubt, you can, notice that in the numbers, just seeing those sorts types of things, at least we have from my perspective. Are there any tools or techniques that you find most useful, astrologically? I mean, Chiron's a biggie. For sure. I mean, that's like that's like probably take your temperature, check your Chiron would be standard.
So, again, I am such a newbie to this, but that points to a lot for me when I see that in their chart. And also just looking at their rising sign of and Karen has taught me this, and she's probably giggling right now, of like what they should be doing in the morning, their practice in the morning, and just how they're wired, you know what I mean? And so I think it just gives perspective on who they are on a deeper level. I actually got into astrology looking at, the Chiron return as I was going through perimenopause, which I thought was really interesting. And I was using Dr. Google because I couldn't find another doctor who would tell me this. But I was looking at, the spirituality of menopause, and the Chiron return came up, and I'm like, this is fascinating. I think this is exactly what I'm going through. So that was really, the portal in for me to learn more about this. And you could probably say more about this, Christopher, but it was such a transition that I feel that it mirrored exactly what happens in menopause. I feel, the wounds and like the dissolving and trying to transmute those wounds and then offer them as a gift to the world. And I thought it was such a beautiful explanation of that. And, it's like getting on an airplane. If the pilot just says, we're going through turbulence for 10 minutes and everything is fine. I wish I had somebody that said, there's a few years where it's going to suck and you're okay. You're not going to die. This is what's supposed to happen. You'll be a butterfly in 4 years. I'm good, So I really wish I had that kind of guidance. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing now with spirituality and menopause. So I'm calling it the soul of menopause. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant connection I hadn't put together before myself, honestly. I had put together, having gone through my Chiron return, midlife crisis, certainly for men, midlife crisis, the cliche of men falling in love with their secretary and, leaving their wife and all that. It was all very Chiron, to me, a Chiron association, and how, the male demographic, sort of approaches it. So I see those trends. It certainly is aligned with aging, as you go through your 40s there on that final stretch to the Chiron return, and then, I definitely felt it myself. And it's such a profound shift you go through in Chiron return. If someone hasn't gone through yet, it's like, which is the planet of healing, which is really interesting. And if you use the SEP system, what we become is you become your wound. So when we come to life, we become our wound, and it seems like our primary objective is to heal our own wound. And that's the wounded healer. It's a Barbara's quote. So it's interesting, and we know so little about Chiron, really. The astrologers really just kind of got onto it, really gravitated toward it, I'd say in the late 80s. So it started getting popular in astrology. So it came out in the 70s, but it wasn't en masse, I think, until the 80s, So I think we're onto something there. Let me know. Look forward to your book.
Yeah. And, learning about Cheroklo, his wife, was really interesting. And she's conjunct my son at 27 Pisces.
Whoa.
So I know. So that was kind of cool. It's like, maybe that's, who I'm supposed to be, or emulate something like that. So
living that energy, which is very interesting. Yeah. I haven't quite figured out Cheroklo, but if everyone doesn't know, like Cheroklo is is always around Chiron. Like she's always like a house ahead or a house behind. So she's busy doing something around the house, you know. So she's literally around Chiron. She's hanging around him, and she's, you know, her step member and sign and everything is the way Chiron will heal itself if it just listen to her. I
That's
love the
right.
traditional female male like the stereotypes in that too. It's
Yes.
just really funny. Yeah. And Juno's the
Yeah.
same way too. Like Juno like knows how to get along, you know, Jupiter's wife better than Jupiter does, you know. So
Mhm.
yeah, charcoal is really interesting. And charcoal is brand new. I mean, I just started learning about that myself. Have you found anything just curiosities? I won't say even theories. I mean, anything interesting about Charlotte Close so far?
So just to, or her being, not really. I've been researching a
Mm,
little bit, but just, she knows her boundaries. She's graceful. She's compassionate. She's a healer. Uh, so
mm,
yeah, I'm really fascinated with her. So
yeah.
yeah.
It seems like she's the medicine. You
Mm-hmm.
since she's the medicine and the application of it and how to apply it. You know, and whenever I go to charcoal, I mean, I've been using charcoal now for about 2 years. And whenever I look at the chart and I look at the Chiron, I go, yeah, that would do it. Apply the Charlotte Clove, that would do it. You know, whereas I'd always come up with a local Chiron solution for it from Chiron itself. And it's interesting because she's always using a different sign, a different step number. So it's like it's certainly an application of one energy to help another. So
Yes.
I wonder if medicines might come from her. It'd be interesting, like personalized medicine.
Mm. I mean, I definitely love her feminine way of operating. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I think that's a lot more compassion, a lot more connection, grace. I think that's what's
mm,
lacking a lot too in the system. So yeah, no wonder she heals Chiron. So
mm.
it makes sense.
Her amazing bedside manner.
Yeah.
So I know very little about this, but human design, you say, has helped as well in your approach to functional medicine. Um, what have you discovered?
Say that again.
What have you, well, with human design, like, how's it changed your approach to functional medicine? I mean, I don't know very much. The other way to ask more probing questions.
Yeah. So I'm working with Dylan right now with human design. I don't know too much about it.
Mm,
But, something that he told me yesterday was that, and I was sort of going through my own thing,
mm.
purging, you know.
Yes. Welcome to the eclipse, by the way. Your eve of the
Yeah, that's what
eclipse.
he
Yeah.
was saying. And
Yeah.
and so, um, you know, that's sort of part of it. And so, I'm still learning quite a bit about that, but I think that's another aspect of people to get, learning more about themselves. And, it's very forgiving too, because being a manifesting generator, it's like, no wonder I hop around to things, I just thought I had ADD, versus like, no, that's your constitution. That's what you are. And so I just feel like, these secrets to the universe need to be like more more out there, more available for people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, would you say, I don't know, I would imagine there's no official response from medical industry about these things. To me, it appears from the outside looking in that astrology, human design, laughable, doesn't even be brought up, kind of. But is there an official snubbery of it, or is it just isn't talked about in that regard, or are nurses secretly talking about the full moon?
Oh, they talk about it because they work the ER, that, there's,
Right.
that's sort of the connection.
Mm,
But not really in these that I have heard.
hmm.
And so, for me too, it's kind of scary to start talking about stuff like this in these
Right.
these circles, you know what I mean? But I think that's part of my wound too, that you helped me figure out of like speaking about this. I
Mm,
just I don't know what else to offer somebody except this work, and it's time now that this needs to be out there front and center and not being afraid of being, ridiculed or made fun of. And I don't know. I did go to this conference a few years ago and I spoke about the spirituality of medicine. And after it, lots of physicians came up to me and said, I pray with my patients too.
mm,
So I think they do it,
mm.
behind the scenes, one on
Right.
one. patience, and but
Yeah.
hopefully it's up and coming. So
I hope so. I mean, if anything, just studies, it'd be nice.
mm.
So, yeah. How do you, when you do get skepticism or a weird snub, is there a go-to? What is your go-to? How do you handle that? Have you had that?
Well, I did with even integrative and functional medicine when I started. So I've been practicing this way for
Mm,
almost 19 years. So
okay.
initially, yeah, it was like, what are you doing? Or,
Mm.
go to Corpus, she'll give you some funky stuff or whatever. And
Uh,
I just kind of look at it. I used to be really offended by it,
mm,
and now I'm just like, well, it's not in their orbit yet, but it's coming. Um, some people arrive at this place because they themselves need it. I will
mm,
say all of my family members who are physicians, who are very conventional, our Thanksgiving dinners are very interesting.
mm,
My medicine, your medicine, but they've all been my patients and believe in this too. So something like that may need to happen,
mm,
in order for them to, be on board with it. But that's okay. It's we just have to keep going, and keep trying. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, the young generation kind of comes with it. You can't stop them. I mean,
Hmm.
I've noticed that they have. I'm really surprised, but the TikTokers, if you will, I used to go in a restaurant. Someone asked me, "What do you do for a living?" I'm an astrologer. What's that? Do you look through the
Hmm.
telescope? Now it's like you're an astrologer. Oh my God, I'm a Taurus with the Pisces
Hmm.
rising, and I have a Pisces moon. I'm in heaven,
Yeah.
and they know all of it. And I'm like, holy crap! Like,
Yeah.
they've memorized it more than a phone number, which is stored in their phone. It's like, it's pretty amazing. So I can't see how medical, society can just stop something like that. You know,
Right.
so where they're converted before they even came to the door.
Right. And I
Yeah,
think the younger generation, you're right. I mean, this is what they want. It's going to be consumer driven, I think.
yeah.
My daughter, who's 18, she would invite some girlfriends over and they would do a past life regression, thing. Mom, can we do that? I'm like, where did you learn that? Of course,
Or
on
Ouija
TikTok
board.
or whatever, but it's so normal to them anymore.
Mm,
It's not quite as weird. So I think that's really cool. So
that's what the future is. Interesting. So, do you have a story? I'm wondering of a transformation that you've helped, like a story of where it's all come together for you, all the tools.
for a patient or for myself?
Either. I think when you say that, we say we want both.
Yeah.
But probably one you've witnessed. I mean, I love to see like where Doctor of Medicine, Quinn. I can't remember her name was. Like, not only knew the cause, but also knew the karma.
It happens, you know, often. There's just so much that occurs in conversations. And I think for me, the way it's just connecting dots, right? And
Mm,
so, um, for example, last week I had a woman who had migraine. She had all of a sudden migraine. She was doing really well. She had migraines, thought she was having a stroke,
mm,
getting the MRI and tingling. I'm
mm,
okay, okay, what happened? She's like, nothing, my life, I don't, the same stress, blah, blah, blah.
mm,
And after about half an hour, it was like, what is actually happening? And she
mm,
said that, her ex-husband was um, stalking her again. So I said, don't you think that's your migraines? And she said, can that really cause my migraines? And I said,
mm,
yes,
mhm,
absolutely. So it's just people making connections, like that, and
mm,
diving deeper and having them notice. And when I'm talking to my patients, they know, it's something inherently that they have sensed. Maybe they might not have the languaging around it, but it makes sense to them versus like taking medications and steroids and SSRIs, which sometimes they need, but it doesn't tell them the root cause, and they want to know the reason why they're feeling this way. So,
They
yeah,
want
and
to get
for
to
my
the bottom of the story. So you're saying they want to get beyond just
oh,
the
absolutely, because they're
mm,
tired of taking a bunch of stuff. I
mm,
want to know the reason why this is happening. And sometimes it's like, well, it's your relationship, and they don't want to hear that, or it's your job, or, it's the place that you're living. So, I don't know that there's like one thing that can heal somebody just immediately. I mean, I think that
Mhm.
that does happen, but I do think, it takes time and to sift through all of these things. It's like peeling onion layers, and eating gluten-free and dairy-free is easy compared to like, addressing your past traumas and, your past lives. I mean, it's easy to get rid of sugar compared to addressing all that kind of stuff. So,
Mm. Yeah, one thing I've noticed, I mean, I was recently hospitalized again. And for me, I've noticed every time I've been hospitalized with like pneumonia, I got a past life memory of I had actually died in the past life from it. But I
mhm,
did this time. So I found that for me, a lot of near death, or what appears to be
mhm,
binding near death, was my body emotionally having to not die, to win, to not to make it through it this time.
mhm,
I know the stab wound from a past life, is still on my leg. This one, a new scar. And it's almost like there's some for me, anyways. I can't speak for everyone, where I have to relive it up to almost dying or whatever it
mhm,
was, to officially emotionally cope with it in modern times, to no longer be, have it. And it's kind of hard, because I have a whole staff of people who believe in this stuff.
mhm.
And I still feel like, I still get kind of this criticism that I'm dropping the ball. Something I'm doing wrong. It's like, hey, yes, in the 1800s, I agree with you, but I swear I went to bed. So it's an interesting position. Even when people are believers, this idea that there's other causes.
Yeah, and I think it's important too that the practitioner, doesn't have to master all of this, but actually hold the space
Mm,
for this is possible. This could be what's happening for you, and not shy away from it and try to suppress it, but maybe even refer out to somebody who has more knowledge around this, and kind of hold that steady, because if we are operating out of fear, it's the outcomes aren't going to be great. And so, knowing that spiritual lesson that you're going through, could you imagine if, your practitioner was like, "Oh, those are, you know, things that you're going through. How can we make you comfortable through that? But I think you're going to be okay."
mm,
That's really amazing. And so I understand that. Yesterday I was like, nervous about coming on here, and I was having those things come up for me too, like somebody cutting my tongue out or being
mm,
poisoned or something around that. It was really, very a terrifying experience about expressing,
mm,
this truth of mine that I tried to express before, and that fear is real, and if we didn't have people around us saying like, you can do this, it's just fear. I heard you say it actually
oh yeah,
yeah, just the other day on
yeah.
your on the podcast, but and you just said it's just fear. You just have to look at it. Okay, I'm still alive. It was just fear, and imagine not having to throw medications at that, or have
Mm.
surgery or send you to the psychiatrist, or to get some medications for those thoughts. I think would be.
It'd be amazing. And then I can imagine,
Mhm.
200 years in the future, where they're like, Black Lilith is in Scorpio, and they're holding back on your Viagra. Like, maybe we should slow down. Sorry, you have to go without. I'm curious too, because I haven't really watched Black Lilith, but I imagine if you want to just study her, next or
Mm,
close, boy, she 100% indicator of where her fear is coming from and
okay.
trauma. And in some signs, like she's in Scorpio as of now, so the Scorpio signs are a bit more easy to identify in the body, so the genitals, reproductive organs, pretty black and white what they are or aren't, and I have witnessed. I mean, I have no medical, no medical study, but you know, STDs during a Scorpio thing, an eighth house thing, yes, yes, yes. People who die of cancer, who get cancer, huge repression of the cancer. Cancer is squared, cancer is opposed. Cancer is in conjuncting Pluto in their chart. Like, so, repression of emotion seems to be where the child grew up in a cold household where there was no emotional exchange. My clients will get cancer. So I see it astrologically without a doubt, and
Mhm.
reproductive issues are on Scorpio, without a doubt. Women afraid of being able to be fertile, all that
Mhm.
fertility, again,
Mhm.
Scorpio. And so those fears will be coming up. And I do notice that, like, in Black Moon little transits, it's like you will present a pseudo disease, like not pseudo, but just like it'll sort of be, it can begin, like the symptoms can begin. You may think you have the symptoms. You're not sure if you have it or you don't have it. Tests aren't conclusive. My clients get into those types of weird, like, do I or don't I? And someone's like, well, is the body just playing along? Or, so I think Black Lilith is interesting. She just went into
Okay.
Scorpio a couple days, a little while ago. So that'll be fun, you know.
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
that actually brings us to, the next topic, which is menopause. How did your personal experience being a patient with menopause lead you into bringing astrology into your medical practice and I imagine your own treatment?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was reading a lot about, Chiron return and seeing this
Mm,
also in my patients. And
mm,
there was just this abrupt shift in women that would happen. Like everything was fine. And then just that one day, something would
mm,
happen and, stuff would hit the fan. And, for me, I left a marriage. I got divorced. I,
mm,
you know, um, switched my practice. A lot of things were happening that were almost like not in my character to do,
mm,
and it was almost like I was being led, you know, in a different way by my soul or
mm,
something else. And it was really painful. And so I saw that happening to a lot of my female patients. And it was just a thing that was happening, and I was really curious as to why. And the first 50, it's like that wound, we were all programmed to do a certain thing, study, 1 + 1 = 2, and now it does not. Why does it not equal 2? And
mm.
that the Chiron return and some of those transits around midlife explain that. And so I think people too just shame themselves for doing it, and it's really devastating for a lot of people when there's no explanation. Like, I cannot figure out why I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing the things that I'm doing, and
Yes.
it's a really hard time, for women. And being able to explain, and for me, understanding now, I understand it because I'm through it.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it was quite a journey. So
Yeah. It is. I agree with you. Like, it's like fate takes over in the Chiron return. There's
mm,
a fate. Like, there is a clock. What I've seen with my third eye is that whatever the Chiron wound is, it's not one lifetime they messed up. There's you were ping ponging back and forth, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. It almost seems like the lifetime is sort of, basically the first 50 years are all sculpted around this particular trend you have in your soul. You keep, we're going to get rid of it once and for all. This kind of return. And when you do have the wake up after the return, which is, I would say just after 50, I mean, it's, it's like clockwork. And there's this aha moment. You're like, oh my God, you realize the issue has been in your whole life
mhm.
that you've been dodging it and not even knowing it. You've been, making, stupid decisions about going places or fleeing or, or leaving people because of it, and it just is this eye opener. But there's this like sort of like, it seems like menopause, it's sort of pre-programmed before birth.
Mhm.
Really feels like that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an opportunity for women to really find their power and speak their truth. You know what
Mm,
I mean? And it's that because we pathologize it, throw everything at it.
mm,
Um, Women don't really have that opportunity to understand why this is necessary, because we're going into our crone phase, right? We're going
mm,
into our wise woman phase, and there's this transition that is important and it's necessary and it's going to happen no matter what, right? And so how
mm,
can we guide women through that? And just, I had a lot of help, like energy healers, shamans, therapists,
mm,
whatever, all around. And it was just like, honey, you're going to be okay.
mm,
And that's all I kind of needed to hear. I mean,
mm,
and having elder women, in fact, guide younger women through this, which I think we're
Mm,
lacking in this
mm,
day and age of
yeah,
the elder community, and respect
yeah,
for the elder community through these transitions, I think is lacking also, right? So
totally. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, and the medicine keeps throwing curveballs in it, right? With
mhm,
birth control and all sorts of things, right? Makes it hard.
absolutely. Mhm.
So in your soul menopause course, how do you integrate astrology wisdom with medical knowledge? Like you do a whole course on this.
Yeah, so, there is this component of the body still. So we
Mhm.
do look at the functional piece. Are the hormones needing to be balanced? I don't want to neglect the body for the soul, and vice versa. I think both of
Right.
them are really important. If a woman's having hot flashes or she can't sleep, we need to address that and figure out, how to balance those systems,
Mhm.
and then have this deeper understanding of, what's the stuff that's coming up right now? What are the wounds? How can we look at them, you know, closer, encounter them with compassion, and that helps transmute a lot of the issues. I think there's just a lot of stuffing and suppression of these emotions, like you said, that don't get transmuted, right? And so holding that in a group, in a space where we can all pretty much normalize, this experience, because it happens to all
Mhm.
of us.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
having a container for that, and teaching about the body, and teaching about even, the transits, and just the journey. I mean, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey also mirrors these
Yeah.
the menopause transition as well. There's so many of these, the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, however you want to look at it. It's
Mhm.
I just don't think,
Mm.
it's in our vocabulary anymore, these natural rites of passage. And
Yes.
yeah. Mhm.
What's interesting is, I veer off of, you know this already, but I veer off of classic astrology and believe that Chiron is the ruler of Virgo, and Virgo is the healer, and Virgo is the
Mhm.
integration of spirit into body. The embodiment of the soul in physical form is Virgo, and so therefore, yes, I mean, I could see that Chiron would be the instrument of disease as well as healing, to sway that particular energy. But you were talking about compassion, compassion being a form of Pisces, the opposite
Mhm.
of Virgo. So, I agree. Like a lack of compassion usually leads to stress and tension, which then leads to hypertension and inflammation, and inflammation leads to disease, right? So it's like literally the application of the Pisces energy, which is it's all good, man. Let's just go with the flow. It's all good, like versus the Virgo, which is that hypercritical, hyper aware. Give me the data, give me the answer, give me it now kind of energy. You can see just in astrology how one leads to wellness versus sickness. It's interesting.
Yeah,
See.
absolutely.
So, what inspired you to create the Soul of Medicine Institute, and how does astrology factor into it?
So this has been in swimming in my head for the last maybe 9 years.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
it came to me in a meditation one day of, creating really this institute. The original vision was to teach practitioners how to do this work, not just functional integrative medicine, but even the emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects
mhm.
as, important, and using intuition in your practice, and meditation, and they're just so important, even as for the practitioner to be using this themselves. It can't be do as I say, not as I do. I think that's a big disconnect too in the
Mhm.
system, and patients know that. So yeah, it was really this movement, that I want to create, of training practitioners, teaching patients. And I think we need it from both sides, because if the patient is knowledgeable about this but needs the practitioner to understand and order the test, and all of that, that can't be not important. I think both sides need to work together to be able to create the health and wellness that we are all seeking. So
If they're all blended, science rules and everything, then a lot of times I find astrology gives me terms and explanations for things that science and the other world never did. Things I observed, things like
mhm.
it's like just the Martian energy, or just the force of belonging, Aquarius. Like man, I still, it's hard to describe now, but it's still like, yeah, what is that weird energy that you feel like you're supposed to be there, but you're not supposed to be there? Like, oh, it's Uranus, it's Aquarius, it's, there's this force in nature that actually pulls on you that way. So, I would imagine that just the knowledge of astrology probably has you look in places you would not have looked, because science said, nah, or don't go there. And astrology's like, these two could be connected, kind of thing. Yeah. Where do you see, your current practice going, integrative medicine? Do you see that evolving right now on a track? Is astrology coming into it? Is energy coming into it? Where is it headed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, my referrals are are rarely to specialists anymore. They're, to
Oh,
astrologers and
I love
psychics
it.
and past life regressionists, which I
Wow.
think is, yeah, it's honestly, that's how it is. And to me, that's new medicine. It's new, but it's old, it's that's the way
Mm,
it has been long ago,
mm,
and bringing that back and just really having people understand. And you know the telltale piece is that patients feel better and they get better, and I see more of that daily than them not. So that's what's
mm,
promising for
mm.
me, and growing in every way that we can grow. As I grow in my knowledge of this, I always share it with my patients, and that's really fun. So yeah, sky's the
Yeah.
limit.
It is fun. It's also fun to have something the American Medical Association hasn't claimed ownership over. They can still be
Mhm.
discovered. What I mean? Like, oh, we can do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, more discovered. Gosh, like, why don't we? How would you recommend, anyone right now watching incorporate astrology or numerology or any of this of the modalities that you've begun looking at? Is there a practical way right now that could help us?
Well, I just think, whatever you're curious about, go for it
Mm,
and do it. And I think listening to, your work and having these practitioners on and even having sessions with them and just learning more about it and using it in your life. It's interesting because they don't contradict each other. They actually line up. You
mm-hmm,
know what I mean? What shows on the lab test is the same thing that would actually show in your chart
mm-hmm.
and, in the
Ah,
human design chart. So
yeah,
they don't they all sort of go together and
yeah,
just complement each other. So I think having somebody be there and just putting it all together for you and just saying like, yeah, that's validating. That's correct. You're correct. So
and a relief. We haven't done anything wrong. You know,
exactly,
yeah, this is a big thing. It's like, oh, you mean I'm not crazy? Nope. Unless
exactly.
all we are, right, guys? Like one of those moments. It really takes a lot of stress off just to know that, oh, this is common.
This
You
is
know,
common. Yes.
and something that science does not pay attention to,
I know.
at all. So once you learn that, you're like, oh, you know. But even a doctor will talk to me. I'm like, huh, what'd you break your doctor? Like just curious. Well, what do you feel like is there a proactive astrological? Have you gotten into moon rituals or anything like that where preventative, proactive? You've seen any results with that? Your own personal study, maybe. I know it's a harder one to study.
Where I've gotten into, tracking, we track cycles with the moon actually. So menstrual cycles with the moon, and actually you
Yeah.
can track even if you're menopausal. You don't need to bleed to track with the moon. So, um,
Oh.
which is really interesting. And there's subtler rhythms that we can pay attention to when we track with the moon. So, for example, new moon would be day 1 of the moon cycle, and
Mhm.
then full moon would be day 14. But there's certain aspects throughout the cycle that feel like you just had your period, or you're ovulating, or premenstrual. And it actually, we track it with the season. So this is a lot of work from the Red School. They do a
Mm.
lot around menstruality and
Mm.
tracking that way. So for me, that's how I'm tracking daily right now. It's like, okay, I'm moon day. So tomorrow would be day 1, right? And so
Mhm.
that would be similar
Mm.
to bleeding. And
Oh,
you
okay.
track your emotions and you track your body and you track the moon according
Yeah.
to that. And then you start to see patterns
Yeah.
because as women, we cycle, right? So we're not going to be sunshine all the time. Sometimes we're lunar and we're introspective, and that's the problem. That's actually why PMS comes up, because we aren't coming in alignment with our truth and just plowing through it when we really need rest around arrest around those times, So
Yeah, I mean the numbers we can't get into tonight, but the step system and the numbers, the body subconsciously, consciously is aligns stuff with the numbers. Like whether what number system you believe in, step astrology or numerology or anything, like you were saying, it's like everything happens at the one, or everything happens at the two, and people tend to coordinate and to gravitate towards that. And it seems like we're all counting together quietly, silently in the background. So there's absolutely. I mean, I honestly feel that numbers are the prime, probably the first source file from COD creation, and from numbers it goes into all these different variants of of manifestation. But it comes down to those numbers, those darn numbers, and counting to 30, 28 days, almost 30, and it's just goes round and round with the number sequences.
So the step numbers could go with the moon cycle too, right? Is that what you're saying? That's really interesting. Okay, so
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
track that too.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
and you're going through. Oh, you could absolutely. Yeah, you could have. So yeah, step one would be day one. Step two would be day two.
Yeah. Okay.
Anytime the mind you comprehend it as a step, it's just a step away from where you were, a step toward where you're going. A conscious step forward. Whether that step is a year or that step is a day, it would count as a number. And so you can do long form, short form. I mean, what I'm really fascinated now are the years of alive. So. All the 40s are innovative. It's all Uranus and something else. Innovate this, innovate that, innovate this. So suddenly it's like get off your ass for 10 years and innovate, and that's what 40s feel like, and 30s, 30s are you going around telling everyone what you believe, like, oh, I believe this and I believe that. And I believe they're full of, poop over there. And, and the 20s are very quite whiny and emotional, very whiny and emotional. You know what I mean? Like everyone's whining, like, oh, you're in college. So it's interesting to see the steps applied even in the concept of 1 year being a step, so, but I think there's like this weird hardwiring to numbers, whether you're expressing them through numerology or step astrology or the gates in, human design are phenomenally interesting as far as the numbers are concerned. So you see it everywhere. Yeah. Fascinating.
So fascinating. Endless knowledge. It's amazing.
Totally, but I'm excited for your work. I think I really wanted to say, the Chiron, connection to, I think the menopause is brilliant, and it might be the way you start to bring him into the conversation. I think it's a brilliant step on your part because it's just kind of impossible for science to ignore, and something every human being is going to go through: the Chiron return and midlife or menopause, one of the two. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So is there something right now you'd recommend for viewers right now in either programs to take a look at?
Yeah. So, I do initial consultations. I do have something called the Soul of Menopause Review, where we go into the functional side and this spiritual side as well. Group programs coming up in the spring. My book Soul of Menopause will be out in the late summer, and then
Yay!
And then my practitioner program probably later on in the year. So all of that's on my Instagram and my webpage. So yeah.
Congratulations. Well, I
Thank
know
you.
your spirit guides are very proud. You have certainly stepped into this, as a step 27 Pisces with a mission. And I can't tell how many of you are around me, how many 27 Pisces I meet. I think I'm in at 9. So, I think it's just, we're family that way, so, but interesting to have one working with me now. But yeah, I think you're doing a great job. You should be proud. I think you just started to see the beginning of it now. So congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
And come back when you get your next breakthrough. We'll talk about that.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, thanks, everyone. Thanks, K Corpus, everyone.
Thank
Yay,
you.
Dr. K Corpus.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
soon. Bye-bye. That was so nice. Yeah, fascinating stuff there. And was a diamond, I'll say. She's very, she will just plug into anything she sees as smart and just absorb it. And it was fun to watch her in the diamond program. I'm not trying to promote myself. It just happened to be this way, guys. But it was fascinating for her to put pieces together, and I pulled in special research for her that she wanted to go and look at different things that other people were, and that's kind of what the diamond program does. And she just excelled at everything she was studying. And it was fascinating also to listen through her, her integration of the two medicines, in her practice. So it's interesting. This is a fascinating time, folks. Fascinating time, because we're seeing the light come into everything, and really slowly, but really without any question, it's absolutely happening. And Dr. Corpus is a great example. So, well, that's all we have for today.